I am Kaylin De Los Santos. I am here to share my experience of my life and how guidance and love and acceptance came about, and how I survived a lot of troubling times and complications. So I wanted to share my experience and let you know how to overcome those intense battles. So I am from New Mexico and lived there since I was about 7 years old. And I was with my mom, and we had the best life, just me and her. There was a lot of moving, there was a lot of kind of new experiences daily with her. We would constantly go on road trips and go see my grandmother, and in that time frame there was a new marriage that came about, and she had been kind of young and had an experience with my biological father, and he was no longer present. He wasn't in the picture at all. So she got married and kind of gained two sons. We had two beautiful boys, and they became a part of my heart and our family. And within that time frame, we had moved to Illinois, and we lived there, and that's where my sexual abuse had started. So whenever that happened, I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to understand or comprehend what had happened. So I told my mom. We all had this sit down and agreed it would never happen again. So fast forward maybe like 2 years, we go to Chicago, and it continues, amplifies, and it's more frequent and reoccurring. And I then at 11 had bacterial meningitis, and in that time frame my mom was pregnant with my sister, but transitioning. We are doing a transgender transition, so it's a current situation, so it's a new experience. I enjoy it so much. Anyway, I had been in the hospital, and she was pregnant. She was not allowed in the room. He was the one during that whole process of this infection reoccurring and having to be under surgery for this brain infection. I healed and had this whole experience still happening and keeping it secret. And I was being homeschooled that entire time. So I only have comprehension of third grade, maybe fourth grade, probably third though. And I was homeschooled until I was like 12, 13. And sixth grade is about the first time I've ever been in public education. That whole time I was being withheld to religious standards. I had been introduced to the church and God and the following of Christ, and so a lot of church people found out about what happened around, again, that 13-year-old age. So this was 2006. It was very eye-opening and captivating to see what the Brethren and the Church of Christ finalized of what happened to an innocent child, and how my brain had different chemical components after all of the situations that had happened. Once I had gone into public education, there was a seminar of how to identify if someone has sexually molested or touched or abused you. And that's when it came into my existence that this was wrong. And being in the light for so long with, having the Church of Christ and knowing what's right and what's wrong, and, what a good, wholesome spirit should be, I realized all of it has been a lie. And I cried and had this aha moment, like, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. So I spoke up, I said something about it, and so he got sent to jail, and his sons were taken away. So that was my first realization of when my family had kind of shattered. I will be right back, real quick. Okay, sorry. I had lost 2 brothers and had gained a sister while trying to maintain a home with my mother. We had nowhere to go. Everything in that whole situation had been gone. So the house, the elements of what was in the house, we had to move to Kansas because that was the only other place for us to live with brethren in Christ, and they were also tainted. They had gone through my mom's individual safe and belongings and money, and so guess what? We moved because we were homeless and didn't have anything. Why would we have someone crossing a boundary to go through our things whenever we already had nothing? It was a big boundary cross. So we moved, and we had another brethren in Christ, and we moved back to Zion, Illinois. So we lived there, and we couldn't sustain ourselves mentally. We were very depressed, and I was very suicidal, and I didn't have any hope left. There was counseling provided by the state, thank goodness. Social workers are so crucial during this time, by the way. They do not get enough attention. They are the ones that saved my soul from jumping off the deep end. So the comprehensive therapy, the hands-on creativity of creating pictures and art and paint and music, like there are so many components of how you can heal internally and accept yourself, and that was a big part of another awakening that I've had once this whole thing had kind of gone away and drifted out and ended. So now that I was in 7th grade and all this had happened, we went to Beach Park, Illinois. So think of it like kind of the hood. So we were financially constricted, and clothes were hand-me-downs, and beauty was not even a priority. So we looked slum, and it's fine because we had food, we had each other, and we had love of Christ and brethren to support us. And in that moment, it was an unconditional thought to always follow within the brethren. And so once we moved to that place and kind of survived homelessness, and now we know food stamps, and we were just having a lot of financial constrictions. So my mom had gotten a new job at a big corporation and found her next appointed husband. And so by my freshman year of high school, there had been a new marriage. We moved out of the mobile home that we were in, those, mobile homes, and we had this experience where my mom had found my biological father in the process. So I met him for the first time right as I graduated 8th grade. So that time frame had a lot to give, and within that freshman year of high school, we had moved to a different part of town, and she got married, and I was still trying to find my true father. And there was a lot of learning of the new marriage and my biological dad, and the alcoholism started to show within that new marriage, and he fought with me a lot, and I was trying to protect my sister because around 2 years old, there was a lot of absorbing and learning and seeing. So I wanted love, compassion, protection, and inspiration, learning, you know, light. So once all that happened, I became the protector, the mother inside that I learned from my mom and my grandma is to make sure the kid has a changed diaper, fed, and has cartoons, learning new things. So I had done most of that my freshman and sophomore year of high school. And right when sophomore year happened, I had met the love of my life. I felt like it was my first true love in high school. And at that time, I didn't know what love was because I've been subjected to a lot of abuse and a lot of verbal abuse by the alcoholism, and then abandonment a lot because of the moving and the homelessness and the family being kind of degenerated through this whole experience. And so my biological father had gone through a bad marriage in that time frame, and I wasn't expecting anything, just support and just being around my father. And he made it very clear that at that time he was dealing with his own internal demons, and I was not priority. I needed to get the attention away from me and stop acting like I need him. So that shattered my entire heart with my father figure. But once his marriage ended, he went back and apologized and said that he was in a toxic relationship with his wife. So it wasn't internalized to me, it was mostly of what he went through. So again, sophomore year, I was like, whatever, you know, I'm just gonna do me. And I found that first high school sweetheart, and I felt like it was everything. Every love, every kiss, every moment. We talked forever, it felt like just true love, puppy love. And I had remained celibate. I did not do any drugs, any drinking, any sex, any sexual activities. I was very strict and very kind of like mentally conditioned to be very, how would you say, very conservative. And a lot of the moments that I have had being conservative was to have this perfectionism throughout the entire time. And my mom has survived through all this trauma, but still had this whole envisioned persona for me. And I didn't know that keeping straight A's while maintaining my first job, this all happened mostly in sophomore year. I was trying my best in education without having a background in education, and raising a child, protecting from the alcoholism and the moves and the parental kind of absence. My mom was supplying salary and maintaining our physical assets to keep us surviving in this new marriage and this new house, and with me being in high school and the baby going to tap dance and soccer and all this new kid stuff. So I helped kind of take care of those things with taking to every activity and doing my activities, and just perfectionism everywhere I could. So fast forward to my senior year, everything was really good in my love aspect, my relationship, until I stopped providing that sex is what's kind of not important in our relationship. And it became very known that he didn't feel the same way. And that summer he had gone to Japan and fell in love with a girl over 5 days, and he was the first aspect of love that I had ever known, and it destroyed me. So at this time I was in better amends with my dad. He had gone from Kansas, ironically, different parts, but he went to Oklahoma, found a new love, found a new life, found a new place, and he was a new person. So I went to him because I give benefit of the doubt and always like to give new chances to different parts of love. And having a parental love is something that I was also absent with. So I went to him and we grew. Our relationship grew. He's the bee's knees, my pea in the pod. We are so in speak. He and I are so close now. And riding horses and being in the country, it's a whole different life, and I fell in love. So I would see him for a month every summer. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. I went to go see him every summer, and we became the closest I've ever had as a parental aspect in my life. And so I learned how to ride horse and did it naturally. I even showed in a Palomino horse show, and I had gotten a prize for it for my first time ever doing that. And no training, maybe like 2 or 3 times on a horse, and I got it from my dad. And I didn't realize how natural nature and animals and compassion I had towards life itself, and just kind of taking in the good moments and not paying attention to anything bad. So a lot of the moments where I kind of crashed and burned is after the infidelity and raising, again, in perfectionism at home. So I started to kind of burn out. By this time, I was at CLC, College of Lake County. I was trying to get my associates, and I was a first-generation graduate. My dad had not gone to college. My mom kind of went to college, but she didn't get her degree. So I was, again, in that house living with her because I still had a kid to raise, and I didn't want to abandon that love that I had built with her. So I stayed in the house and still lived up to those standards, and the Church of Christ had become more so embedded in my identification process. And I knew that I loved Native American culture and spirituality and nature and animals and rescuing. There's been a whole aspect of me learning. And while I was in college, I took sociology, I took psychology, I took humanities, the study of a culture and society terms, and conforming to a lot of these labels and traditions, and what is normal, and what that word right there, it's what you perceive as normal. Nothing is actually normal. So I wanted to become into social work, and I loved the aspect of love. So I researched a lot of the chemical components and the actual dynamic of relationships and what the types of love are and how your love language is towards someone else. And in this whole time frame, I, from 20 to about 24, had this whole experience of being an assistant manager for a resale retail that had 15 to 25-year-old young people all around me. And with the experiences that I've shared, I was able to enlighten and guide those troubled souls and hearts of young adolescents. And it's so important to educate those who are struggling with depression and anxiety, and knowing that their worth is internal, not what others see you as, and being different, and being unique. I never fit in. I was always bullied in school. So middle school was rough, going through all that, and then having a lot of people say, oh, you're white, but you have a body of like a Latina girl. And so I hung out with a lot of Hispanic culture, and a lot of the outcasts because I didn't fit in anywhere, not with, you know, the whiter folk, or even the Latin folk. I was the outcast, and so throughout my entire existence, I knew that my name, Kaylin, was very different. De Los Santos, even though I appeared to be white, I was a walking, talking contradiction to who I was appearing to be. And that's when I realized I could perceive someone's appearance of who I am. Be right back. So, I played a lot with makeup, and while working in that retail, became addicted to clothes. And I was dealing with a lot of my sad emotions, but I didn't acknowledge my internal story of who I am. And so now that I've come to terms with everything, I turned 21, started drinking out at bars, and was like, you know what, I can't sustain a relationship. My parental relationship with my mom has kind of gone to the wall, so I am now living in my truth and speaking out that the perception of what I was going through and having to be a parent through all this is so incredibly tough. I have so much gratitude towards my mother, dealing with everything that she has gone through. She has a lot of childhood trauma. I have a lot of childhood trauma, and what we were raised to embody in our entire existence is not to feel, not to be. There's no place for a woman. You don't get to speak up. You don't get to be unique, loud, and proud and say your truth. It was dress a certain way, speak a certain way, think a certain way, eat a certain way. All of this under the aspect of breaking free from it. Now that I'm 24, I had a conversation with a lot of those broken relationships and boundaries and self-care and love and happiness, and I knew how to find true love, and I did. I found true love at 24, and I am still currently in that relationship and could not be more grateful. Love has changed my entire being. I know what true love is. I've done a lot of research, and I know it exists, and it does exist. And if you are able to accept and love yourself for your story and what you've overcome, you will find that love. If you can love yourself, someone else can love you. And a lot of what people have told me stays with me. Their stories are important. You are validated, and it's not because of the terms of society, and it's not because of all those labels of perfectionism and how you're supposed to look. There's no certain way. You are unique as long as you're authentic to yourself. That was my aha moment, again, around when I was about 25. I had gotten in a toxic environment with my previous corporate work, and I had experienced that Me Too movement in corporate America, and I had someone aggressively come to me and threaten me and just told my management what had happened, and they disregarded and said that I was over exaggerating, and I had to share my experience of my sexual abuse in my past and physical abuse. I didn't realize that that was still a thing in corporate America of the Me Too movement. And I gotta say, throughout my entire existence, I am not gonna play a victim, because I'm a survivor, and you're a survivor, and you have a story that is true to your heart, and you need to abide in your strength and you overcoming those things. I have so much love to give to each individual that is willing to grow and change the mindset and the trauma patterns and all the negative into positive, reframing the mindset. I am a 26-year-old today taking a Shemina Taylor course that has changed my life forever. My mindset, my thoughts, my emotions, how I feel, it will create things in my life. And I know that I can create a pathway for those who've gone through these things, that there is hope, there is true love. I definitely am supportive and loving of all those souls that have been broken, that have survived, that have been through the hell and back many times. I'm here for you. Talk to me. Message me. That's my story. I love you. See you later.